Welcome to a series of talks in which we're going to be examining sources that are absolutely necessary to study in order to appreciate Jewish prayer. Today we're going to be looking at what's known as the first page of the first Siddur. You will see in a moment from the opening of the first page of the first Siddur that the Siddur was compiled not with the intention of creating a Siddur, but with the intention of answering a question. The person to whom the question was addressed went by the name of Rav Amram, and he was the head of the yeshiva in Babylonia in the mid-1800s. Let's look at the beginning of the question. Amram, son of Shashna, head of the yeshiva of Masamasya, a suburb of Sura, responding to Rav Yitzchak, son of the teacher, and Rabbi Rav Shimon, who was held dear and adored and honored in our eyes in the opinion of the entire yeshiva. This was a question that was asked by the Jewish community in Spain, more particularly the Jewish community of Barcelona. It's in the second paragraph, I will move to the second paragraph now, that you see the actual question being asked, being responded to. The order of prayers and brachas for the entire year that you requested, that has been shown to us by heaven, we deem appropriate to set forth and lay out in the manner in which the tradition was passed down to us, as compiled by the rabbis during the period of the Mishnah and of the period of the Gemara. In other words, the period of the Mishnah and the period of the Gemara run roughly from the years almost 70, the destruction of the Second Temple, until approximately 500 or 550, when the Talmud was put into its final form. So the question that you see that was asked is the Jewish community of Barcelona wanted to know what they should be reciting as part of Jewish prayer. We can conclude from that question that there was dispute, there was confusion. There were different versions of the prayer services that were being followed in Spain in the mid-1800s, and they were looking for an answer as to what should be the authorized Jewish prayer book. What I think is significant is how Rav Amram begins his response. He says, "And so we learn. Rabbi Meir said, a person is obligated to recite 100 brachos each day." Rav Amram, as his introduction to what a Jewish prayer service should consist of, and he's beginning with the morning service, is telling those waiting for this answer that you begin by remembering that there's an obligation to recite 100 brachos. This is a reminder that the Jewish prayer service, whether it's the morning, afternoon, or night, are built around brachot. When I say a bracha, I mean lines that begin Baruch Atah Hashem. Sometimes Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. In the case of Shemona Esrei, it's Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avoseinu. Why we have that difference in Shemona Esrei is something we will look at in a later class. But the structure of the Jewish prayer book is built around brachot. And if you think about what we recite as part of Jewish prayer, particularly the main prayer, what's known by the name Tefillah, which is the prayer of 19 benedictions. So they chose benedictions, brachot, to be the structure of the main prayer of the day. Now, given the fact that there are 19 of them, and we recite it 3 times a day, that already gives you 57 brachot. Now, you may want to ask the question, what is so significant to recite 100 brachot every day? Now, I think that the answer can be found in a source that talks about why we need to recite 18 brachot in Shemona Esrei. That was a question that was asked obviously at a time when Shemona Esrei still consisted of 18 brachot. And the answer is because God's name is mentioned, is referred to 18 times in Psalm 29. Psalm 29 is a psalm that we recite when we return the Sefer Torah to its ark, to its place, on Shabbos morning. Also recited as part of Kabbalah Shabbos on Friday night. And the fact that God's name is mentioned there 18 times is considered significant. It's considered a lesson. This is also a chapter of Tehillim from which one source derives what should be the theme of the 18 brachot of Shemona Esrei. Now, the word that they use to describe God's name, I think, is very significant. It is called an azkara. That comes from the Hebrew root of Zayin Chof Resh, which is to remember, the score. Zecher, Zechor, all forms of the root of Zayin Ches Resh, which means to remember. In my opinion, we have to refer to God's name 100 times every day. And when you think that we begin in the morning by referring to God's name, the first blessings that we recite when we first arise, and we recite God's name in the last bracha that we recite before going to sleep. And during the course of the day, we mention God's name in brachot associated with tefillah. We mention God's name in brachot that relate to eating, both before eating and after eating, and when we wash our hands and when we take care of our personal needs in the bathroom. When we come out, we mention God's name as well. So when you think about how often you mention God's name when you properly recite the brachot during the day, you can see how important our sages viewed the recital of God's name. And so the purpose of reciting 100 brachot every day is to be constantly reminded of man's relationship with God. In other words, Zechor, remember. Remember every time you recite God's name, remember your relationship that you have with God. Now, the fact that Rav Amram Gaon begins his Siddur, his introduction to the Siddur is by talking about the obligation of reciting 100 brachot every day, gives you a clue as to what the Siddur actually represents. Most people view it as a collection of prayers. I think more properly it should be described as a collection of brachot. In other words, the Siddur is a guide to reaching our goal of reciting 100 brachot every day. And there's no question that the majority of the brachot that we recite every day are those that are recited during the prayer service. We begin the prayer service in the morning by reciting a bracha on washing our hands, on coming out of the bathroom, on the study of Torah, and then we recite 18 what's known as Birkot HaShachar, morning brachot. We acknowledge the fact that we can open our eyes, that we can get dressed, that we can stand straight. All of these brachot are being recited, again, to remind us of our relationship with God. But that, again, prayer service is not the only time in which we recite brachot. We know we have to eat at least 3 meals a day. We probably have a couple of snacks during the course of the day. And each and every time that we do that, we do recite a bracha. And we remember our relationship to God. So to me, the significance of the first page of the first Siddur is that it teaches us the importance of the brachot as part of the prayer service and the importance of reciting 100 brachot every day. There is another important point that comes out of this introduction to this first Siddur, and that is who it is that asked the question. It was a Jewish community in Spain that asked the question. What we find is that subsequent to that, the Jews of Spanish origin, and of course they are known today as Fardim, are very loyal, became very loyal to what is found in Seder Rav Amram, in this first Siddur, as opposed to Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim have their roots not so much in Babylonia. They have their roots from Italy. The Jews of Ashkenaz originally came from Italy, and the Jews from Italy originally came from Eretz Yisrael, from Israel. And they brought with them customs that are known as Minhag Eretz Yisrael, the way that Jews in Eretz Yisrael used to pray. And there are significant differences between Minhag Bovel and Minhag Eretz Yisrael, something that we will go into in one of the later classes. But for our purposes, it's important to note that Sephardim are very loyal to Minhag Bovel. Ashkenazim have strong roots in Minhag Eretz Yisrael. Just two quick differences. According to the Gaonim in Babylonia, you were not allowed to interrupt the repetition of Shemona Esrei with the recital of Piyutim, with liturgical poetry, while Ashkenazim do regularly to interrupt the recital of Shemona Esrei with Piyutim, whether it is on the high holidays or whether it is on special Shabbosim that we have during the course of the year. The second difference is that the Jews of Babylonia used to open up Kedusha with the line of Kesiyidnu every time they recited Kedusha. In Minhag Ashkenaz, in the Ashkenazi custom, they never open Kedusha with a line of Kesiyidnu, and again, that's something that we'll go into at a later point. But this first page of the Siddur serves as a reminder that the Jews whose origin are from Spain, Sephardim, are very loyal to Minhag Bovel, and in contrast, the Jews of Ashkenaz, even though they have adopted much of Minhag Bovel, still retain some elements of Minhag Eretz Yisrael. If you would like today to experience what we call Minhag Eretz Yisrael on a greater level than you will find in an Ashkenazic synagogue, I suggest you visit the Great Synagogue in Rome, because the Great Synagogue in Rome and the Rome follows what's known as Nusach Roma, the Roman Rite, and that Roman Rite has significantly more elements in it that represent Minhag Eretz Yisrael than does Ashkenaz. In particular, I would recommend you go on a Friday night, and this will get to be very confusing for you, but if you prepare yourself, it will not be. And that is that the first bracha of Kriya Shema on Friday night is different. The third bracha of Kriya Shema at night is different, and the middle bracha of Shemona Esrei on Friday night is different than that of Ashkenaz and that of Sfarad, of the Sephardim. It is not difficult to prepare yourself. If you go to HebrewBooks.org, you can find Zorim and Siddurim that provide Nusach Italia or Nusach Roma. So that's why the first page of the Siddur is very important, and that it establishes that the Siddur is a guide to fulfilling the obligation of reciting 100 brachos each day. Thank you.